In this episode of Upper Echelon Crime Lab, we'll be discussing the case of Tamera Williams and David Carter. Now, before we get too deep into the story, I first want to say that this young lady has been placed on the FBI's top 15 most wanted fugitives list. So the fact that she was eligible to make it to the top 15 of the FBI's most wanted fugitives shows how heinous her crimes are, even before I get into it. Now, I'm getting ready to delve into the relationship that she had with David Carter, who is the victim, and how they met, and a little bit of the red flags that she showed within their very short relationship before she unalived him. But before I do that, I want you guys to know that this case was actually featured on Unsolved Mysteries. Now, Unsolved Mysteries has been rebooted and is now on Netflix. Now, the name of the episode on Netflix that this story is featured on is called Body in Bags. Now, there's a reason why the name of the episode is Body in Bags. This story is going to blow you away. David Carter was born on July 16, 1979 to his parents Elton Sr. and Marie Carter. David was the type of person that was extremely goal-oriented. He had really big dreams for his future, and he was determined to fulfill all of them. One example is that he was the owner and founder of his clothing line, Lavish Habits Unlimited. Now, his son, David Jr., took over this clothing line and is now the CEO after his untimely demise. Now, in this picture is David Sr., his son, DJ David Jr., and DJ's mom, Samia, who is David Carter's longtime girlfriend. Samia and David dated for about 14 years on and off before they ended up breaking up. But even though they broke up, they still maintained a really good relationship for DJ. So they were really good at co-parenting, and they still loved each other as friends. I really love this picture here because I think that it is a testament of the type of father that David Sr. was. As you can see, DJ's holding a football flyer. He's wearing a football jersey. And he was always at football games or doing something athletic. He got that from his father because his father was also very athletic. But it's said by friends and family that David Sr. never missed any of his son's football games. He was a very, very involved father. As previously stated, David Sr. was no longer with Samia, so he started dating in 2018. He wanted to put himself out there to meet new people, and that's when he ended up meeting Tamera Williams. Now, there was irony in them meeting again because this was actually a reconnection. David knew Tamera from high school. Although they weren't close, they didn't really have a relationship in high school, and they didn't run in the same group of friends. However, they did recognize each other when they ran into each other in 2018 at a mutual friend's birthday party. After they met at the mutual friend's birthday party, they immediately hit it off, and soon after that party, they became an item and began dating. Now, during their tenure of dating, David's family notes that they did recognize a lot of red flags from Tamera. They also said that they expressed these things to David. However, they were happy for him because he was happy at the time, so they just left it alone. Now, this is David's sister, Tasia. Tasia says that she never liked Tammy and that there was just something about her. But the family would get on Tasia and say, just let him be happy, leave him alone. You're just being an overprotective sister, as most sisters are. But she said that there was just something about Tammy that she could not get past. David's father also stated that he saw some strange behaviors in Tammy, such as following him around no matter where he went. She always had to be there. David's father recounts a family event that they had because their family was very tight-knit and would always have barbecues and cookouts and parties. And at one particular barbecue, Tammy literally was following David everywhere he went. He could not walk away. He could not go get a plate to eat. He couldn't talk to any family members without Tammy being right behind him. He said he found it weird, but he just chucked it up to her being clingy. Really quickly, I just want to reiterate how crazy it is that Tammy and David literally, I don't even believe they were dating for 6 months. David met Tammy at the beginning of 2018. Tammy eventually ended up unaliving David in September of 2018. So this lady became so crazed and obsessed over a man in literally less than a year. That is the craziest part of this case. The craziest part is what made her so possessive and so obsessed in such a short period of time. Now, there's a couple of occurrences that stuck out to the family, to David's family, that he actually shared with them and let them know that it was some things that he was concerned about regarding Tammy. Now, there was a particular instance, in these two instances that I'm getting ready to tell you guys, these things happened weeks before his death. Now, in the first instance, he went out to the movies with a female cousin. Somehow Tammy ended up getting wind that he went out to the movies with a female cousin. Now, I'm not sure if Tammy knew that the female was his family or not, but when David got back from the movies, got settled in at home and went to sleep, Tammy actually came to his house and slashed all 4 of his tires. That, in my opinion, is a huge red flag. Now, let's get into the second instance. Now, remember I told you guys before, David was a huge family man and he was a very involved father. So David Jr., his son, was always having a football game and David never missed those football games. Now, at this particular football game that he went to, this will be the last time his family saw him alive. He came to the football game with Tammy. Now, one thing that the family noticed is that Tammy was not sitting with David. David was sitting all the way at the bottom of the bleachers and Tammy was sitting all the way at the top. Now, the family did find that weird, but they just chalked it up to, well, maybe they had an argument in the car on the way to the game. So they kind of just ignored it. One thing that I found very eerie was that David's child's mother, who is DJ's mother, was also at the game. As I told you before, they had a really good relationship. They were friends and they were good co-parents. Now, she was sitting with David's family and they were all pretty much sitting together. Now, Tamera, who is David's baby mama, said she turned around because she was looking for Tammy, because she was wondering what her behavior was like, if she was sad, if she was upset because she wasn't sitting with the family. So she says that when she turned around and was looking for her, her eyes met Tammy's eyes and Tammy was staring her down. So she had been staring at her before she ever even turned around. Now, Tamera said that that made her very uncomfortable, and she said that she will never forget that look on her face. She said it was the look of evil. She said that it was almost like she was burning a hole through her skull. She was staring at her so hard. And then after that, she just turned back around and didn't mention it again. Now, after this particular football game this night, this was the last time that David's family would see him alive. David and Tamera ended up leaving the football game together, and David was never to be seen alive again. Now, after that last time that they all spent together at the football game, this now brings us to the day of September 30th, 2018. Now, on this day, DJ, David Jr., was actually scheduled to go over and spend the night at David's apartment since he split time between his mom's house and his dad's house. Before that happened, DJ's mom, Samia, got a text from David saying that he was really sick and he didn't know what he had come down with, but he feels like it's probably not a good idea for DJ to come over on that day. Now, when DJ's mom told him this and he heard that his father was sick, he started texting his dad, trying to see if he was okay or if he could bring him anything, trying to gauge what was really going on. And he also tried calling him, but David said that he couldn't talk at the moment on the phone because he wasn't really feeling well. Now, at that moment, DJ decided that regardless of what his dad said, he was going to go over and try to see what was going on with his father. Now, if you ask me, I believe that that was Tammy texting Samia, just trying to basically throw her off and cover her tracks because she didn't want DJ to come over there and walk into a crime scene. Which would explain why his father wasn't actually responding to any of the phone calls. He would only respond in a text message. Obviously, in my opinion, he couldn't respond via telephone because he was already unalived at that time. Now, DJ did stay over his father's house the previous weekend, and he did leave a couple of items, including an iPhone charger. So he used that as an excuse to go over to his father's house, but he really wanted to see what was going on. So he drove over to the apartment complex, got out of the car, and he noticed that Tammy was actually walking out of the apartment carrying a trash bag through the parking lot to put in the dumpster. So how this looked is DJ and Tammy initially crossed paths. So Tammy was walking towards the dumpster. DJ was walking towards the apartment. Now, shortly after that, in kind of a split second, DJ remembers Tammy dropped whatever was in the trash she was carrying to the dumpster, and she turned around and started running towards the apartment, almost as if she was trying to beat DJ to the apartment. Now, DJ is quoted saying that yes, he did think that her behavior was strange, but in that moment, he didn't really say anything. He was more so concerned about checking on his father. So nothing really registered with him at that time. Now, DJ got to the apartment. He noticed the door was locked, which was also really bizarre because Tammy had literally just seen him and she knew that he was coming to the apartment, but she decided to lock the door anyway. Now, luckily, DJ had a key, so he opened the door. Now, once he made entry into the apartment, Tammy was standing right there and met him at the front door and asked DJ what he was doing there. To which DJ replied that he was there to get a phone charger of his, and had she seen his phone charger. Now, Tammy quickly told DJ she hadn't seen the phone charger, didn't know where it was, but throughout this conversation that we're having, DJ noticed something strange, and he noticed that his father's bedroom door was shut, which was rare for him. He would typically leave his door open even if he wasn't in the bedroom. Now, DJ also noticed that the bathroom door was closed, which didn't make sense because if his father wasn't in the bathroom, then the door wouldn't be closed because it typically isn't. Now, after he noticed all of these things, DJ told Tammy that he was going to go into his father's bedroom just so that he could check on him. Now, after DJ told Tammy he was going to go into his father's room, that's when Tammy told DJ that David actually wasn't home. She said that he had gone out for a walk to get some fresh air, which, to really anybody that's hearing that, it wouldn't make sense because if David was as sick as everyone was making him out to be, there would be no reason that he would be going outside casually strolling the neighborhood and not feeling well. So it just didn't make sense. And then also it was really cold outside. So if you're sick, you're not going to go out for a walk in the cold, casually strolling around the neighborhood. So just none of it made any sense. Now, even though all of these things factor together, including Tammy's strange, bizarre behavior, and the fact that the doors were closed in the house, and then also the fact that his father was saying that he was sick via text message, but he was outside taking a walk, all of that stuff was weird. However, DJ's first mind did not go to something sinister. He just figured that he would come back at a later time or call his dad at a later time and check to make sure everything was okay. He was actually scheduled to go to DJ was actually scheduled to go to his grandmother's house soon after him visiting his father. So he decided to just leave and see where things would go the next day. Now, on this same day, which was September 30th, David was scheduled to go to work on that day at about 5 o'clock in the morning. However, he never showed up for his shift. Now, his coworkers knew that this was kind of out of character for David. He would never just miss the shift and not call. And it wasn't until about maybe 2 or 3 more shifts that went by over the next couple of days that David missed, where one of his coworkers called his sister Tasia to let them know that David had not been showing up for work, and they were concerned and wanted to know if he was okay. Now, when his sister Tasia heard this, she obviously was worried and knew that something was wrong. Something just wasn't right. She ended up calling David's phone, and it was going straight to voicemail. She then decided to call Tammy, who did answer the phone, but told her that she hadn't seen David since Sunday. So remember, Sunday was September 30th, the last time that DJ was at David's apartment, and Tammy was acting really weird, and he saw her carrying the trash bag out to the dumpster. Now, remember, at this point, it's been a couple of days since DJ's been at the apartment. So at this point, it's Tuesday. So it's been a few days since Tammy is saying that she has not seen David. Now, remember earlier in the video, I told you guys how the family was concerned about how obsessive Tammy was of David. Always needed to know where he was, always needed to be with him. So Tasia did find it kind of odd that Tammy seemed so unconcerned about David's well-being or whereabouts. Now, Tasia and her husband, Derek, just decided that they were going to go to David's apartment themselves just to check on him. And once they pulled up, the first thing that they noticed was that David's car was actually still parked in the driveway. When they got to David's apartment door, they knocked several times before realizing that the door was already unlocked. Now, once they got to the inside of the apartment, they ended up calling Elliot. Now, Elliot is Tasia and David's father, and they just needed backup. They wanted somebody to be there with them while they investigated the apartment. Now, shortly after Tasia and Derek calling Elliot, he arrived rather quickly. Samia, the baby mama of David Sr., also joined them, and everyone immediately noticed the state of David's apartment was not something he would have ever been okay with. David's apartment was really, really messy, and he typically was a neat freak. He was incredibly organized. He was always making sure that everything was in its place. Everything had a place. But when his family got to the apartment, they noticed that everything was a complete mess and the bed wasn't made, and there was things thrown all around the apartment. There were dirty dishes all in the kitchen sink, sheets and towels just thrown inside of the closet and not folded. And that's just not the way that David typically kept his place. That's just not how he lived. Eventually, his sister Tasia ended up looking under his bed, and that's where she found a large red spot that appeared to be a blood stain on the carpet. There was also indentations inside of the carpet showing that the bed was actually moved. And it appeared that someone moved the bed from where it was into that location over the red spot to try to hide it. Now, the family also noticed that there was a large red stain on the comforter that was on the bed. And there was also a hole in the mattress that looked like it could have been a bullet hole. Along with that, there was also a small hole in the closet door. And once the family saw the state of David's apartment, they decided the best thing to do would be to leave the apartment because it was obvious at this point that it was probably a crime scene. Now, when they left the apartment, they ended up going to the Melvindale Police Department. I'm not sure if I mentioned this prior, but all of this is taking place in a small town called Melvindale in Ohio. Now, once the family got to the police department on October 2nd, which is what date all of this went down, they filed a missing persons report for David. Now, after filing the missing persons report, David's sister Tasia decided, you know what, I'm going to call Tammy again. And she's basically calling her because Tammy is acting like she could really care less about what's going on with David. She didn't even show up to the apartment to help them see how he was doing or if he was okay, why he hadn't been going to work. So she was really trying to feel the temperature with Tammy. She was trying to feel her out to see if she knew anything about his whereabouts or any information about what may have happened to him. Now, you guys have to remember what I said previously. Now, Tammy is obviously not the type of person that wouldn't care where her boyfriend was. Now, this is the same person that slashed David's car tires, all four of them, because she was jealous about him going to the movies with his cousin. So, obviously, her nonchalant behavior was peculiar for this instance. Now, once Tasia ended up getting Tammy on the phone for a second time, Tammy still had the same pretty much nonchalant attitude, and she kind of just stuck to her story, saying that she still hadn't heard from him. She didn't know where he was, and the last time she saw him was on that Sunday when DJ was at the house. So now we're moving into the next day, which is October 3rd. Now on October 3rd, which was one day after the missing persons report was filed, the chief of police called David's father, Elton, and asked if he could come down to the police station and answer some follow-up questions about David. Now Elton went down there and he sat down with the chief of police, and one of the first questions that the officer asked was, did David have any tattoos? And now Elton was able to answer that David did have some tattoos. Now, one of the tattoos was a tattoo of a pit bull with red eyes on his leg. And when Elton told the police this, that is when he learned that 2 days prior, on October 1st, So one day before the missing persons report was filed, there had been a discovery of human remains, and the leg in the remains that they found had the same tattoo as the one that David had. And through that and through other things such as DNA testing, they were able to determine that the remains that they found were the remains of David Carter. Hence the name of the Netflix special, Body in Bags. Now, the way that David's remains were recovered will probably shock you. David's body was found in a sleeping bag off of I-75 freeway in Eagle Township, Ohio. He was discovered by an Ohio Department of Transportation worker who was on the side of the highway mowing the grass when he discovered the sleeping bag. The sleeping bag was then collected and sent off to the medical examiner, and she was absolutely shocked when she unzipped it. She discovered that David had been completely dismembered and that the only remains that were in the sleeping bag were his lower torso and his legs. So the rest of his body was still missing. So not only does David's family have to get the news and process that David has passed away and was unalived by someone at this point, is what the authorities are saying. They're not really having a person of interest just yet, but now they have to also process the brutal way in which David's life was taken. So now we move on into October 5th, 2018. On the night of October 5th, DJ, David's son, actually had a football game. He decided that he was going to play. He decided he was going to play for his father, and he dedicated that game to his father. Now, DJ said that his dad taught him that, quote, no matter what happens in your life, you just always have to keep going. And he applied that quote to that night, and it was one of DJ's best games. His team actually ended up winning 64-0. DJ said that seeing his family in the stands supporting him that night was something that words couldn't explain. But at that football game on October 5th, Tasia actually got a call from her father, who told her that the police had actually made an arrest in David's case and that they had arrested Tammy. Now, on the night of October 5th, when DJ's family was at his football game, Tammy was actually being arrested. They brought her in for questioning, and according to the police, they conducted multiple interviews with Tammy, trying to collect as much information as they could. But she stood by her story and said that she hadn't seen David since Sunday. So, unfortunately, because the police didn't have the rest of the body, they could not hold her because they didn't have a cause of death. So, they ended up having to release her. Now, this is the part of the story that pisses me off. I do not understand why they let her go. I've racked my brain about it. I've gone over this case. I'm not understanding why they let her go. If they would have just kept her, the family would not still be going through all of this. This has to be terrible for the family, thinking like, okay, we're finally getting somewhere. And then, boom, you let her go. And now she's been on the run since 2018. I believe that if the Melvindale Police Department would have went about things differently, then the family would not still be looking for this woman. She would not still be on the run. Whether or not you know what the cause of death was or not, you obviously know that it was not anything in where he hurt himself, for God's sakes. The body was dismembered. Now, shortly after they released Tammy from questioning and interrogation, about 5 days later, October 10th, more remains were recovered on the same I-75 interstate. Now, these remains were sent off to the medical examiner. When she opened the True Religion duffel bag, which contained the remains, she discovered David's head inside of it. So now they had the lower part of his body as well as the head. Then a couple of days later, on October 16th, the remainder of David's remains were found. Now, these remains were found north of Findlay, Ohio, in a suitcase. The suitcase itself almost looked like it belonged to a child. It was yellow and had flowers drawn all over it. And inside the suitcase was a comforter, and inside the comforter were the third and final set of David's remains. Now, with these remains, the medical examiner was able to determine what caused David's untimely demise. It was determined that David met his untimely demise due to a blow with a firearm to the back of the head. It was determined that that firearm was very close to the back of his head when it was fired. It was also discovered that David had high levels of antihistamines in his bloodstream. Now, antihistamine is commonly used for a common cold, or it can be used as allergy medication. Now, antihistamines also cause high levels of drowsiness and sleepiness. Now, the medical examiner also concluded that more than likely the cuts to his body that were done during the dismemberment were made with nothing more than a common kitchen knife. And because of that, the dismemberment process would have taken a very long period of time. So because the police now had the cause of death and all of the remains of David, his family was just waiting for the police to arrest Tammy. You would think that the next step would have been to arrest her because they were waiting on the cause of death and they got that. They were waiting on the remains and they got that. So you think that the next step obviously would be to arrest her. But weirdly enough, October came and then it went. Then November came and went. Then the same thing with December. And the family never really got any real update as to what was going on or what was taking so long. And then in December of 2018, the police then issued an arrest warrant for Tammy for first-degree unaliving. Now, it wasn't until January 2019 where David's family would learn that Tammy actually wasn't even in Melvindale anymore. Police informed David's family that Tammy was now on the run. Police had no idea where she was, and to this day, she is still on the run and wanted for the unaliving of David Carter. Now, again, this is just another devastating blow to this family because, as you can imagine, one, you're grieving and trying to process this in the best way that you can because everything that's happening is so unimaginable. And then the police actually catch the person and arrest them and have that person in their custody, and then they end up letting them go. So I'm sure their emotions were just a roller coaster during these times. Quick correction, I'm not sure why I kept saying that Melvindale is in Ohio, but Melvindale is actually in the state of Michigan. Now, the Melvindale police have brought in the U.S. Marshals for assistance in locating her. However, to this day, no one knows exactly where she is, or at least that's what they're reporting. Now, I personally don't believe that no one knows where she is. It's quite hard to just go off the grid, disappear, and no one ever sees you again. Family doesn't know where you are. Nobody just knows where you are. Now, this woman was a mother. Her twins were 18 years old when she initially met David. She's been missing since 2018, so they will be around the age of 22 or 23 years old at this point. I just don't believe that she has just disappeared, left, has never ever had any further contact with her children. I don't believe that. Now, I believe they know exactly where their mother is. I believe that they communicate with her in some form. And I don't believe that they have been without contact since 2018. I also believe that the woman on the screen, Verdine Day, who is Tammy's mother, does have contact with her. And I also believe that she is helping her financially while she is on the run. The reason I say that is because it was reported that Verdine Day, who is a retired Detroit Fire Union treasurer, is accused of stealing over $200,000 from her union in 2021. Allegedly, she spent it on lavish trips and other personal expenses. I do not believe that. I believe that she was stealing money from the union, and I believe that she was in some way sending it to her daughter. A lot of people are saying that her daughter is somewhere out of the country or somewhere really, really far away. Something is telling me that she's not that far away. Something is telling me that she is right under people's noses. She may have changed her appearance. She may have changed her hairstyle. She may have even gotten a cosmetic surgery to change her appearance. Something. Because if her mother stole that amount of money from her union, she would not have been able to send it to her daughter via wiring, because that can be tracked. Any type of wiring or sending money in that form or fashion can be tracked by the FBI or the U.S. Marshals. So I believe that this young lady is somewhere in the United States. I don't think that she's far from home. And I think that somehow, some way, she has drastically changed her appearance to where people wouldn't know who she was. She may have even gotten the rose tattoos that are on her left arm removed. Now, Verdine was charged in federal court with bank and wire fraud after the scheme was allegedly uncovered following an audit, which was initiated in 2020. Day, who was once honored as the Detroit Woman Firefighter of the Year, initially came under suspicion in October of 2019, just after her retirement. Now, what are the odds and how big of a coincidence is it that this woman has been with the Detroit Fire Department for all of these years, and she's even been honored and decorated, and just so happened right around the same time that her daughter goes missing, she's accused and charged of bank and wire fraud up to the amount of $200,000. What trips did she go on? What lavish expenses did she have? I smell something fishy here. She is most definitely, in my opinion, helping her daughter stay hidden from the law. And if she's doing that, she is dead wrong. This woman took another person's life. This woman took a father from a son, and took a son from a father, and took a brother from a sister, and a brother from a brother. And she has destroyed lives over her crazy jealousy. If anything, her mother should be talking to her about turning herself in. She can't run forever. Now, on October 16th, 2018, which was the day that the final set of remains were recovered, Tammy had made several ATM withdrawals in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Police then have surveillance footage of her eating dinner. Okay, so she was chilling, okay, after this unaliving. She was chilling. They have surveillance footage of her eating dinner by herself at a restaurant. And then after that, she took one of those carriage rides. You know, the carriage, you can sit in the back of the carriage, and someone in the front is riding a bike and you're sitting, is being drawn by the bike. She took one of those rides to a hotel. In the morning, the next day on the 17th of October, she then took an Amtrak train from Ann Arbor, Michigan to Chicago. She then got on another train when she got to Chicago and took that to Penn Station in New York. So if you look at it on a map, she goes from Michigan to Chicago, and then from Chicago all the way back to New York. So it's really like she's backtracking. When she got to New York, she stayed at the Neptune Hotel, which is located in Brooklyn. And remember, at this time, nobody knows to look for Tammy because no one has reported that she is on the run. So when she got to the Neptune Hotel, she didn't check in under an alias. She actually checked in under her real name and used her real ID. Then when she got up the next day on October 18th, she was seen on surveillance footage leaving the hotel, and that was the last time that Tammy was ever seen. Now, when it comes to the family's theory as to what happened, they believe that David had been trying to break it off with Tammy for some time and was working on a way of how to do that, considering she was controlling. She seemed violent, if you ask me, and very possessive. And he believed that if he just broke it to her harshly, that it wouldn't end well. The family believes that the reason why she sat so far away from them at that football game was because on the way to the football game, they drove there together, and they believe that David and Tammy probably had an argument in the car, and David probably alluded to the fact that he didn't want to be with her anymore, which is why she was sitting so far away. And remember, the football game was the last time David was ever seen by his family. They believe that she probably unalived him that night. I wanted to show an age-progressed photo of Tamera Williams, also known as Tammy Williams. It shows what she's wanted for here. I got this photo from the America's Most Wanted website. She was last seen, as I stated before, in the Bronx, New York. She is age 42 at this time, and she's 5'5". Now, Tamera has always been very versatile with her hairstyles and things of that nature. She might play around a lot with colors and styles, also makeup. Also, don't forget her mother did get charged for wire fraud, and she did steal over $200,000. I believe that she possibly could have used that money and given it to her daughter for some sort of cosmetic surgery. So it's possible that she looks very different than what she looked before. So there's that. Then also, don't forget, Tamera does have a I want to call it a half sleeve, but her entire arm is covered in roses. It's a collage of roses, rose tattoos. It's possible she could have gotten that removed, but it's also possible that she has not. So let me show a picture of that. It's a little blurry, but you guys get the point. So that will be on her left arm. Now, Tamera worked in the medical field and she worked as a travel agent. She's known to be a world traveler and has ties throughout the United States. She also has close involvement with the Order of the Eastern Star. So you know she has a lot of connections if she's an Eastern Star. Williams, again, is 5'5" and she weighs approximately 190 pounds. She has black hair and brown eyes, and again, she has the large tattoo of roses on her left shoulder. She should be considered armed and dangerous, so do not approach her. But if you have any information about her whereabouts, you need to call the U.S. Marshals 24-hour tip line, which is 1-877 wanted 2.